So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the second tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we understand the events of the time of the end. And then per Yeshayahu the 61st chapter, he explained from a time where not even the spring feast was completed. So let's try to analyze then from where Yeshayahu comes from. He was a prophet, he was the indicator of the instructions, but then he was speaking words and understandings of events of his time where people simply did not understand. They thought he was a bit unique. And truly he was, because he was explaining of beyond the time where then after the completion of the spring feast would take place. The cities then laid waste for many centuries. He was speaking of the cities of the Messiah, or tabernacling. If you understand cities, you understand tabernaclings. But then the word tabernaclings does not make any sense, because tabernacling is singular understanding of a plural form, where then Yeshayahu the prophet explaining tabernaclings. But then how could they understand tabernaclings as plural, where then tabernacling is truly singular from a time where not even the spring feast was yet completed? So then from this time where then we make an analysis of what then Daniel the prophet, the statesperson, the politician Daniel of the time of the exile, and was explained why the nation was in exile, was because the land did not rest during the time set per the instructions, the early Shabbat. So then the land did not rest after then sometime 490 years of owning the land had rest. So they were kicked out of the land, and so the land could rest because they were not obedient. However, we find then the statesperson Daniel. He did mention of this trade of the time of the end. The translators did not understand what it meant. When you begin to understand, then the raw material, for instance, visions and so on and so forth at the river, and then you understand then each of those metals indicating a kingdom or a nation. Then he was speaking this time of the end related not with the kingdom but with the system. The wordings used did not make sense when the translators began to translate it. It was left out. How do you find the evidence of it? Yohanan the prophet. Yohanan was also a prophet, because you have to prophesy then yet upon kingdoms and nations and so on and so forth. So he had the spirit of prophecy. However, he was a shaliach. So then we find these understandings of the layer upon layer. We find a layer in Yohanan, dictated by the Messiah himself. Then obviously Daniel the prophet explained it. But he explained with a set of words or paragraphs or understandings or layerings where they did not understand. The Messiah also made mention, we have only 10% of the recordings of the spring feast. And a section of the spring feast is found mixed up with the autumn feast. So then Daniel did explain it, of this new system coming. So then where we find then areas of understanding related with this system, and where do we fit? Now it's very simple, because the understanding comes from areas where then the system related with Daniel's explanation of the time of the end related with increasing of knowledge. So when you understand it from the viewpoint of a statesperson Daniel explaining the head of gold was Babylon, then came other nations such as Middle Persians, then came the Alexander the Great, and then came Rome, and so on and so forth. So then you have to represent each metal as a kingdom. However, the content of the objective of Daniel the prophet and the statesperson, the politician, was to make a reference of a time with leadership. Time with the leadership, time and leadership. Then he spoke of the base, and then people would go to and fro. He's explaining from the tabernaclian's viewpoint that is a set time of deceit, where people would be roaming around. Time of deceit, 1,000 years without directives from the Holy of Holies. And knowledge would increase. At the end of these 1,000 years, would have an increase of knowledge. Now, what you understand, increasing of knowledge from a statesperson, politicians, trades individual as he was. You have to start linking up the understanding. It is related with trade. Because Daniel was a tradesperson, his primary job was tradesperson, and the second was guiding his people during the time of exile, for the great majority of the time. Because there is a section in Yirmiyahu, he did understand per the manuscripts of Yirmiyahu that the time of the 70 years was then coming to an end. He did understand tabernacling, obviously. But his primary job was a statesperson. So the time of the end, knowledge, obviously he did explain the system at the time of the end. The translators did not understand what he was talking about. However, in Yahana you find it. So then, from the viewpoint, what is the most dangerous part of any system? It is being caught unawares, isn't it? During the Second World War, what was the objective of Pearl Harbor? The element of surprise, wasn't it? When you translate these areas regarding computerized systems, because it's the only way you can link the layer of understanding of Galah, the 8th chapter, related with then the third part of the ships and the trades going on related with the computer, because knowledge. What can you understand when you have a system concocted during the time of the 1,000 years of deceit? How would you make a transition from the time of deceit leadership of the world versus then what is coming in the future? What do you understand? You understand then nations being caught unawares. The element of surprise. You understand then the system, when the time comes, people simply download on their computers. Since it's an international system, our government won't be able even to move. They won't be able to get in the system. Because the system of the world must be cleared away from the 1,000 years of deceit. There is a shifting going on in the entire planet, preparing for the autumn feast. And what was concocted during the time of the 1,000 years must be cleared away. So we find that in the Eurozone breaking, we find in Germany obviously removing the gold deposits from our country and France, already indicating the Eurozone is going to break. Then we find our monetary system failing in shortly 36 months. We find then also Great Britain also failing, maybe division of the kingdoms. So what was so popular during the time of the deceit then is being removed. How do you do it? Via computer with element of surprise. So we can expect our monetary system to have a weakening of it, but certainly and surely removing itself from the world's market, in order to give space to the Chinese system, so it becomes a neutral system from country to country. How do you achieve this? Element of surprise. Our country, unfortunately, is very concerned with human rights, so on and so forth, but is so overbearing, and they are neglecting the basics of taxation. Let's say, for instance, if a person has multiple financial institutions with funding in it, and a person is then not paying taxes, if the government would come around and say, what is your social security number, because we are going to maintain a record of what you earn, a person would take it personal. Oh, you are trying to invade my privacy. No. The government is making sure, for instance, the 10% that belongs to the government should be given 10%. But then they understand and they get mixed up with nomenclature, and then they don't do the job. They don't do what they should be doing. And it's precisely these human rights scoundrelized, where the government does not take a strong stand to get the percentage due them. It's going to be then the area where the element of surprise in the future is coming from. Because you have to protect the privacy of people. Understandable. Has the government taken taxes from them? No. Why are they protecting? Their own stupidity, because they have to deduct the taxes. People are not paying. People are evading taxes. When the system comes, they're going to take advantage of the privacy. So then, during the time of the war, our country also was involved in code breaking. In Washington, they were there, and there was a team over there around. They were listening to these raw materials, and they were deciphering it. What do you think should be done at this very moment, 24/7, as it was before? Gathering raw materials and then coming up with a system. Instant tax deductions. And the government must work 24/7 until the entire nation is instantly paying taxes. Each individual. Understandably, it's a whole lot more complex than cracking the code from the time of the war. But times have changed. Knowledge increased. So a person doesn't have to go very far to understand. Then the army has to come up with a team and qualified people to get the entire work taken care of 24/7 as fast as they can. And those involved with the secrecy of the programs, if they leak out, they should be shot. Because the future of our government depends upon instant tax deductions. When the system comes, it will have no mercy. The government then would be dealing with a monetary system that's broken. Nations are making very quick changes from the existing monetary system related with the US to this new Chinese system. And what I have to do is to only do a transfer of what they are investing in us versus then the Chinese system, and they invest in their own system and then removes the old. And these actions are going to be taken nearly overnight. But then when the government has secured 100% every financial institution in our country, where each social security number then is tracked. The government then is not interested in 90%. They are absolutely, objectively waiting for the 10%, or whatsoever stipulation is then guided by the government. And because it's invasion of privacy. No, it's not. The government is not doing anything with 90% of yours. It's your interpretation of the problem, if there is any, because so far give to the government what belongs to the government. So they are monitoring their 10%, or whatsoever percentage categorized per person is then given. The 90 is yours. You can do whatever you want with it. Make sure the 10 goes to the government instantly. So when the system comes, then when there is a movement of flow of funding from the system into their banking or their financial system, they are already under track. This is going to then prevent our country from going to the hands of the Chinese. Because there is the factor of being caught unawares and not be given any option afterwards. Whatsoever comes, the government has to take because they have no way of working with. They would have a huge problem with privacy, a huge problem then with the closed circuitries of banking and financial systems. How are they going to overcome these obstacles prior of even trying to come up with a system that is nationwide? While then our monetary system is going to be greatly weakened, and then the government can't function. So let's try to interpret properly. During the time of the Second World War, when the Japanese invaded Pearl Harbor, there was over there a radar on the top of the mountain. And the radar picked up the airplanes coming, and they were informed. But then, could the aircrafts coming from the mainland, would they come from the north? No, they would not come from the north. So then what we as a nation we cherish so much, our liberties and our privacy, it's precisely where we are going to be hit from. Where we think we are so safe because of privacy, they're going to use against us. And the government has failed to maintain the 10% that's theirs. So then when the system is ready and the US has its entire system tracked, then they would be ready for the system, because then when the Chinese they make a move, yet our monetary system would be intact, active, and any kind of playing around with the system they would be caught, because there is a tracking of every movement of funding. Though our country won't be able to play around with the system itself, they can download on their own computers and watch what's going on with the products around the world, investment and so on and so forth, but because they are a foreign type of internet downloading system where you can have thousands of anywhere of any kind, it's not tracked. It would be as privacy of a system where the government can hack into it. It's 100% legal. So we are going to experience a second Pearl Harbor if we are not cautious. There are signs. The radar scripture is already given the information. During the time of the war, they interpreted the wrong information. Aircrafts coming from the north. The mainland aircrafts coming, they don't come from the north. And then not only the system, but then comes the revitalizing of our electrical grid. So industry then can start picking up. More perforation for petroleum, more coal. Double stack the power plants. We have to revitalize our industry. Because by then, when the system is implemented worldwide, our own monetary system, foreign-wise speaking, is going to be nearly deactivated. Because we don't have industry anymore to maintain it. Let's give an example. You buy a product from China, for instance, a resistor for radios. You buy it for $5. You have freight at $0. You get freight for no charge. You have to have a system to provide you with at no charge. Otherwise, if you were from another nation, it's always very cautiously tracked. You have to pay $5 for the product, and depending upon the place, sometimes you pay double for freight, because it's a system tracked. So how can you get freight at $0? It's not only because the company is nice, it's because there is a system behind it sustaining it. So then not only the system must be updated, but then when our monetary system worldwide then diminishes, we have to compensate with industry. And those technologies, they can't be produced as bulk, as easy as the other products. Those are spoken for. Either we should specialize ourselves maybe in electrical cars, electrical trucks, electrical buses, lines, computers, new technologies, because it's going to be furious in the future when the system comes. There are nations in poverty, they're going to be rich overnight. It doesn't take much to have it done. A simple generator, a signal from the sky, from the space, from the equipment in the space, linking up with the system in exchange for the ores, the raw materials. And the pace of these is going to be extremely fast. If we are not prepared for the next 36 months, then we won't be able to react in the future, because it's going to be absolutely furious. Fast numbers coming in, people investing and removing the resources from whatsoever place they are at, investing in the entire system, and buying and having it sent at no charge for shipment, and people are going to get in this huge monstrosity of system, and people, some of them are not going even to rest at night. They're going to be 24/7 in a computer doing trade. The world is going to change absolutely 180. We are not going to recognize our world the next 36 months. Each place where there is a computer and people with knowledge, they're going to become factories of some sort, tradespeople everywhere. And granted that some of these remote places, they won't be able to have many computers, but there are people on those places with computers doing trade for the entire city. And ships everywhere, coming and going with thousands upon thousands of tons of materials. You know what our government is going to do? They're going to sit back and they're going to only watch it. Because there is no way of entering their system. The only way they can track it in our country is via the financial institutions. Because the normal fact of restoration, meaning whatsoever was implemented during 1,000 years, has to be flushed away. So when you read the third part of the ships and every nation doing trade with China, it's implicit. It is a bit scary, but you have to understand a system is a system. Must be implemented so then tabernacling can be established. So then a couple of situations, couple of objectives of the utmost importance is then obviously the military on top of it, having the team 24/7 as long as it takes to get the job done. The second is more energy in the grid so then our factories can start picking up the end of the shaft. This means more petroleum, more perforations in Alaska, finding more crude, new technologies, electric cars, whatsoever it takes to get the market with new technologies and new ideas. So then we can do trade in the future. Because people are going to sit back and watch this entire situation taking place worldwide, and they're going to be in awe. But as long as our country can do what should do, update the entire system, then they can have a track of it. That they can bargain.